Good morning, sunshines. Callie Carol here. And I thought that I was going to be doing a live update, just telling you guys how it was like a month out of my mastectomy surgery. And I was like, yeah, I can do all these things. And look at me move my arms. And like I'm on the next stage of healing. But nope. So, what I want to do today is just give you an update of where we're at, what's next, and also just talk a little bit about a question that I just recently received about like, do you dwell on what what could happen? Like, is that anywhere in your heart of hearts, like thinking about possibilities after having a cancer diagnosis yourself and fighting that currently, as well as your youngest child having a cancer diagnosis? Like, what is that like? So, if you guys are new here, welcome. Nice to see you guys. We always just say hello or do your little 3 sunflowers if that's for my cancer in honor of that, or 3 butterflies if it's in honor of Witten's cancer. And I will just kind of catch you up. Well, first of all, my baby boy was diagnosed in June of 2022 with a rare cancer called Langerhans cell histiocytosis. And I'm going to be talking a lot more about histiocytosis and just what it's like to have such a rare breed of cancer where there's very little funding to go into supporting the kids that go through that. He went through 58 rounds of chemotherapy and he's now NAD. So that's no active disease because it is not a curable cancer because, again, of the funding. He also has another disease because of a tumor that was in his head called arginine vasopressin deficiency. It used to be called diabetes insipidus, which is where his body does not know how to manage water and hold on to water. Very complicated. It's like having diabetes, but not being able to have any sort of like mellitus, your normal diabetes that you think of, but not being able to have any monitoring for your insulin levels. So then I was diagnosed just 3 years later, as I've been writing this book to heal from my child's cancer and just like that experience and really just dive into and release some of the trauma that I was holding on to. I started my book. I think it's going to be called The Chemo Mom. I'm not exactly sure. But as I'm writing that and I'm on the chapters about his diagnosis, I start to have these symptoms. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer in August 28th of this year. So that's where we're at. Update on my personal journey before we talk about the do you dwell is I had my mastectomy. So when I went in for a normal routine mammogram, I like to share this part every single time because you guys, I just went in for a mammogram. It's not like I had this huge thing. There was like something, but I've always had like dense tissue. So I kind of felt like there was something everywhere. And I went in for my routine mammogram and there was an irregularity. And then when I went back a couple weeks later, they saw the tumor. And then 3 days later, I was getting my mammogram, confirmed that I had DC, invasive ductile carcinoma, IDC, and they started working towards scheduling getting a lymph node removed to see if it had spread to my lymph nodes yet. It hasn't. So that was like a huge thing for us. And then I opted to have a double mastectomy where I remove both breasts completely, taking my nipples so that there's a lesser chance of reoccurrence. In this process, I also found out that I was positive for something called CHEK2, which is a genetic mutation that predisposes you to breast cancer, giving you like a 38% chance or a 34% chance of having it. So the doctor said, regardless if you wanted the double mastectomy, that's what we were going to tell you to do, even though I had already made that decision. Did that. I tried the expander process. And just a real quick side note on this, you guys, a lot of people, and I've spoke to this before, they think that when you have breast cancer, a lot of people will kind of just say in jest, like, at least you get an upgrade or you're going to get some new boobs or you get a tummy tuck and an upgrade. And that's just not the case. It's an extremely challenging and painful process for most women. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's the reality. And even if it does work, your prosthetic boobs, not your boob job, not your boob augmentation, like they just look very different than what normal boobs would look like because you've scraped out all of the tissue and you're really trying to rebuild what's in there, right? So I started the reconstructive process, wanting to give my body that opportunity to have it. And at the same time, I made a request to God during this whole previous month, because I just didn't know how my body would handle having something foreign in it, knowing that I'm pretty sensitive to things. Like I can't even get eyelashes because there's fake falsies, because there's something in there that makes me feel like I get the flu. So I spoke positively into it. I was like, I'm going to receive this. My body's going to love having these prosthetic boobies, this reconstructed process. And that just it wasn't the case. And so I had asked God, I said, if my body's not going to receive these, if that's my path, could I just find out quickly, swiftly, and safely? Like, can we just know? And lo and behold, 2 weeks after my reconstructive process, my body got an infection. One boob turned like viciously angry red. But it's just a gross scene, guys. And I landed in the hospital a week ago on Thursday. I spent 6 days in the hospital managing the infection, taking some IV antibiotics. And then I made the choice at that time to have both of my expanders removed. So here's another just like interesting fact for our women, your breast cancer warriors, and the amount of choices and options they have, and the challenge of figuring out what the hell's right for your body, right? So the doctor was like, okay, so this one's infected. I can just take one boob. And in fact, it wasn't even just like, here's your options. It was like, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to remove that expander. And then you'll wait 6 months with one transformed expander boobie, which by the way, people hate having expanders in. It's very uncomfortable. It just feels forward. It's not like having an implant. It's a challenge. If there have any warriors in here, comment on that. It's not an enjoyable process, right? Because you can have that one expander in your body for 6 months, and then we'll go back in and we'll try again. But there is a chance this boobie will also become infected because this one did. And then we'll go in and do another surgery and remove the other side. And I was like, here's where I know I'm at. I already had the conversation with God. I asked that if my body's not to receive these, then let me know swiftly and quickly and safely. So I said, I want to remove both expanders. And our conversation was, he's like, my job as your plastic surgeon is to do everything that I can to give you the experience that you want. And generally, when you're talking about plastic surgery for reconstruction, they say that either the woman will stop requesting surgeries because she's so sick of it, or the surgeon will say, I cannot do anything more from you. Like this is all I can do. This is as good as it gets. That's generalized, but that is, some of you have beautiful experiences, which I love that, right? But that's just the generalized terms there. So I told them, I said, I appreciate that, but I can't go through this again. I don't want to go through this again. And my body, it's saying no, and that's okay. And his response is that's a very mature decision. And yeah, I've already fed 4 freaking amazing babies, you guys. I breastfed all 4 of my kids for over a year each. I donated breast milk. Like, my boobs have done me service, right? They've been such an amazing part of my journey, but they do not define my femininity. They do not define me as a woman. And I don't want to go through the challenges, pain, and suffering for potentially having breasts that I don't need to have anymore. So I made that decision to remove them both. And right now I'm sitting what I call Shar-Pei style because it's so infected. The doctor had to be very careful going in, and he like scooped out all the infection. He could see right where my pain was. Like, he could actually see the infection. Ugh, gross, right? And so he scooped everything out, but this breast was so inflamed that they had to like stitch it up with that old school black stitching instead of the tape that they use now. And they had to leave all of the skin because it's too volatile to try to do any sort of surgical removal of skin. So right now I have all that extra skin, fun, and not like my old boobs where it's like, quarters in a dime sack sort of like hanging, like it's just like just skin that's just like bleep. My son went and he's like, hey mom, it looks like your boobs go in the wrong direction. It's like it's going inside instead of outside. I was like, I know, son, that's my Shar-Pei boobies. It's cool. It is what it is, right? This is where I'm at until my chest completely heals. And then I will go back in for another surgery, and I'll have a conversation with my plastic surgeon to see what we can do to try to flatten me up as aesthetically as possible, as a woman can walk around not having any breasts. And there are millions of flatty baddies out there. I just want to shout you guys out. Tag your flatty baddie if you know someone who's living the flat life and doing so very happily, right? So I don't know what that looks like or what it's going to look like, but he said 2 to 3 months for my skin to completely heal. I'll go back in for another surgery, and they'll do as best they can to close that up so it's not all Shar-Pei-like. And until then, cool. This is what I'm dealing with, right? So that's catch up to where my journey is. And back to the question that I received recently about like, do you dwell after being diagnosed with cancer? And it's so interesting, you guys, just to share about this. So like the first 40 years of my life, I didn't have direct family implications of cancer in my life on a very heavy basis. Like there were a couple people that I knew that, like had a quick response and quick treatment, and they were doing great, but it wasn't like a regular part of our family life. And then when my son was 1.5 and he was diagnosed with cancer, my world turned upside down, an incurable rare cancer, right? And I had some heavy, deep conversations that I'm writing about in my book with God about the brevity of life and respecting our life and enjoying our time here. And it was, I mean, they're hard conversations to have, and trusting in the process and in our time here, but also not living in a state of depression because of that. So I really, over those 2 years of healing with Witten, it wasn't just him healing, it's our entire family that was moving through this, right? Moving through that and focusing on living in the day-to-day present and choosing gratitude every single day, even when our lives were a literal shitstorm. Like writing about this stuff right now and revisiting the memories of him just barfing every 30 minutes for 12 hours and me just trying to figure out how to keep this little boy alive was a very, very freaking difficult time. And I went into zombie mode sometimes, but one thing I did not allow for myself to do was to slip into a state of feeling complete lack of joy, of like a lack of faith. I couldn't live in that state. There's no way where I could be the strong mom that I needed to be during that state. So it was the first experience and exposure. And since then, since he rang the bell 2 years ago, right? We do scans every single year on his brain. It's an MRI where we check to see that there's not any neurological long lasting repercussions of having the first tumor in his brain. So anybody who's had a tumor in their brain, they're probably going to have continuous MRIs on that. And as in terms of his cancer, we just have to watch. Like, does he have a limp? Does he have a skin ailment? Is he acting differently? But there is this like fear that settles in right around October and right around April when we're going to do these checks to see how he is. And we're doing another scan in January to see, because they found an artifact on his scan, which is supposedly like maybe just like a little blemish on the actual scan, but they have to be sure. So now I get to live in 3 months with that question lingering, looming of like, was it really a problem with the scan? And that's a fact of our lives. That's part of what journey we're experiencing for the duration of our time here on earth. Is it's like as a cancer patient, as a cancer mom, as a chemo mom, whatever you want to call it, you're like always looking over your shoulder, and there's always some lingering part of you, even when choosing to live in joy, even when choosing to live in presence, even when choosing to find gratitude. There's this little part of your like stomach that's like, but fuck, is everything okay? Like, is everything really okay? And you don't get to let your guard down on that. You don't. Not as a mother, and I don't know, like now I'm stepping into my own cancer journey, and it's like, really, like we got childhood cancer and then my own cancer, and I'm the mom that takes care of the kid. And if you guys have been following for a while, what's really wild is last March and April, we have quite a few podcast episodes where I was just having these different bad dreams and concerns, like, what if something happens to me? Who's going to care for my baby? And we got to move through that. And I found support on it, and really like talking about it on the show gave me a lot of light and support. And then this whole experience has given me a different light of like my family does, like they did. I was at the hospital for 6 days. They all functioned just fine. It wasn't easy, but they got through it. And getting to this point where now for me, knowing that I'm waiting to find out if I have chemotherapy, I have another week. So it's been 3-4 months since my diagnosis. I still won't know if I have chemo until December 2nd, because they have to do this score, which is going to give me my likelihood of reoccurrence, which is interesting, right? Because that's just like, will you get this again or not? Because that's the question. Like, that's out there of, is this going to come back? And then in my groups, we're like, well, my first time I was diagnosed, I was 41, and the second time I was 58. And there are so many stories of reoccurrence. And even though breast cancer is highly funded, highly researched, and highly protected, trying to find ways to support women the best they can, there is still the chance, and quite a chance for a lot of women, that there is going to be a reoccurrence. So Now, not only am I looking over my shoulder to protect my son, but I'm looking over to protect myself that I could so that I can continue to be the mom that's here standing for my family. Now, all of that being said, here's where I guess it comes together to the question, like, do you dwell on that? Do you think about it on a regular basis? And my answer is no. I can't. You guys, I can't live in that state. I can't. All of us, the truth is, life is short for every single one of us. Whether you live to be 103, that's too short, right? Or somebody lives to be I don't know, 20, whatever it is, any age, it's just too short. There's never enough time to do all of the things and accomplish all of the things that you want to do. But we all have experiences where we get to choose to be present or choose to spend our time, energy, and effort in worry. We get to choose whether or not we focus on the giggles and the laughter and the little moments that invigorate us or light us up, or if we miss all of those moments because we're living in a space of fear. And I know that I say that with confidence, but it doesn't mean that it's easy for me to do on a regular basis. It doesn't mean that I don't have to check myself continuously. And it doesn't mean that I don't have complete breakdowns sometimes. And I honor myself through that. I let myself move through those emotions. And also I ground myself back in my faith and my creator, knowing what the long term is. But I want to share that with you guys today because it's not just my family with childhood cancer and me having cancer. You guys are going through something. There's something in your life that's challenging you right now, and it's distracting you and it's pulling away from your joy. And you're like, yeah, but it's not cancer, Cal. It's divorce, or it's challenges in my friendships, or I just don't love my job. That is still distracting you from your ultimate joy because that worry, that thought, that fear that's continually grabbing onto your mind is not allowing you to be present in your now. And I don't know what your future holds. I don't know what next big mountain you're going to have to climb is, but there is going to be a mountain. There is for all of us that we grow in the journey of climbing up that ridiculous mountain that none of us wanted to be on. But that's just a part of the life, right? So for each one of us to know that, like, I acknowledge what you're going through. I acknowledge the challenges that you're facing. And also I pray and I hope for you that whatever is occurring for you in your life, that you're choosing to, as much as possible, root yourself in the possibility of right now, the possibility of smiles right now, the possibility of joy right now, the possibility of a warm embrace, or a letter from a friend that just makes you, like, just laugh or feel seen or heard, or a taste, something that's just like, I just love that first, the first taste of coffee in the morning, finding those little moments that just light you up and give you joy. So I don't dwell. I don't dwell. It does come in and it comes out. It comes in, it comes out. That's going to be a part of my life forever. And that's just part of what it is. And if you would have asked me when I was 20 or 25 or 30 or 35 or 39 or 40, right when I was having my babies, like, I would have never had this sort of come from, because I would have never, I might have experienced some losses. We've had some different things in our life, but not at this level where I can really ground myself in saying that even though and despite these huge mountains that we've been giving, and these challenges that we are hiking and moving through right now, even though I will continue to choose to smile, to choose happy. And I hope you guys can do that too. So that was more than just an update. Good morning, sunshines. But I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of insight on where I'm at mentally right now. And I will probably do another update after I find out if I'm having chemo next week. And then I got to start talking about hormone therapy, because apparently that's a bitch, but it's also part of my 5 to 10 year plan. And I'm going to do what I need to do to keep my body safe. So, warriors out there, I acknowledge every single one of you. My flatties, my reconstructed, my one titty bitties, all of you guys who are just moving through life. I just want to recognize you and your power and your being and your joy. And then my warriors of every sort, every ailment, every illness that you've pushed through or you're pushing through something. And then all of mine that have lost. You've lost someone. You've lost someone to the battle. I just want to send you light and love. So for all of you out there, dig deep and find your joy. It's in there, okay? Okay. It's not supposed to be a crying episode, but I gotta go. I love, I love you guys. I'm gonna go cry with myself for just a minute. All right. Bye, guys.